Public Works Committee. It is May 7th, 2018, and by special request, we're doing mostly general services stuff today. So it's kind of a new ground for us, but welcome, Police Chief Lee White. Item number 1.
Thank you, glad to be here. This first item first came before you in October of 2017, where you approved us to apply for funding for a victim advocate position, better known as a STOP grant. At that time, we were authorized to apply for 2 positions. We learned recently that we have been awarded 1 of those positions. And so the total funding amount that will be coming to us apparently is $65,396. We're still waiting for the grant agreement to reach us, but what I'm seeking approval to do today is to accept that grant once it reaches our doorstep. The city's responsibility for that is a 25% match, which is $21,800. If you want more detail on what this position will do, I'll be glad to provide that, but nothing's changed since the October 2017 council meeting.
Any questions?
No.
Boy, that was too
Nothing's
easy.
changed. So this is an important grant. I'm glad we got at least 1. So
It'll provide a
guess I
great
would
service for us.
assume that if we thought we might get 2, we have more than enough matching funds that were already identified for the match?
Yes, the amount of work that this person will be doing, we have enough work to keep 3 or 4 victims advocates working. The match funding, I think, was discussed during the last council meeting. I'm sorry, the one in October.
So I'll trust we're good. Okay.
Look for a motion,
Okay.
please.
I'd make a motion to recommend council accept funding for 1 victim advocate through the Stop Violence Against Women grant in the amount of $65,396 with a 25% match from the city of $21,800.
And second.
Been moved and second. Any other discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Moving on. Consent calendar, please. Number 2, Police Chief, you're up again, Lee.
The second item is another grant position. This one was the traffic grant for a DUI officer. And I don't remember the exact council date that we discussed this, but it's within the last 2 or 3 months. I think it was January, February of this year. This position was for 75% of an officer's wages and benefits, plus some overtime and some training dollars, and also some equipment costs, such as I think it was a radar gun and a computer for this position. Anyway, that total amount looks like that we're going to be awarded is $107,966. Our responsibility for that is 25%, which is $26,992. Our big difficulty with this item, and frankly the other one before it, is vehicles for these 2 positions. I don't have any spare cars at all. So when we applied for this grant, when I brought it before you, I told you that we would be looking to purchase a vehicle with existing funding that we have during this fiscal year. And I do have, it appears, adequate funding for the DUI vehicle. And the total cost for a DUI vehicle is about $68,000. We would be utilizing vacancy savings to pay for that car. Really, I can't have a DUI cop on foot patrol, so it's kind of a necessity that we give him something to drive, and we don't have any spares laying around. So what I would be asking permission to do then is to purchase 1 vehicle out of our this year's existing budget in the amount of around $68,000. The car is really only about $38,000. I don't remember exactly what it was. It's all the stuff that we put in it that makes these things so darn expensive. And so the total vehicle amount fully outfitted would be $68,000.
Questions?
I have 2. So on these particular grants, especially one like this that we're purchasing equipment for, what happens when the funding runs out?
They provide it's kind of a scalable funding. The first year they provide 75% of the officer's wages and benefits and the stuff that we put into the grant, including some overtime and things like that. The second year is 50%, and the third year is 25%. After year 4, we're on the hook for the full boat for the officer and whatever other equipment they might need from that point on.
So then, you're kind of prepared for that in advance, and we'll work that into a budget or determine whether it was a valuable enough program to keep the position?
Sure, it'd be one of our ongoing discussions. At some point, if council determines that we say we don't need as robust of a traffic program as we have, or we have to go through a reduction of workforce or something like that, this would be, the newer officer would be one of the ones that we would discuss riffing. This position, though, we're required to keep in the DUI function for the length of the grant, which would be 3 years plus 1. But with the work we have, not only for this one, but also the previous grant that I spoke about, we have adequate work to keep these people incredibly busy.
Right, so, yeah, I was just looking at that, trying to make sure that I had recalled that this isn't just a one-year program. It does go on so it's gonna be more
Yes, ma'am.
sustainable.
This grant is a little unique in that we have to continually apply for it every year. Every year to the 3 years, we have to reapply. But once you get it the first year, it's just, I hate to say rubber stamp, because nothing really is with the government, but it kind of is. As a matter of fact, the last traffic grant that we received where Officer Sterling was moved into that position, that was about 3 years ago, and it just renewed every year. We have to reapply with a different dollar amount, obviously a request and
As they scale it.
grant and that sort of thing. But yeah, it changes. And frankly, if we did come to the point where, you know, say the city got hit with some really hard financial times or something, then there's always retirements and things like that going on. For instance, I'm down 5 officer positions as of this moment today, and I was fully staffed about 6 months ago.
Wow. So we definitely have some place to work this person into, and then that's kind of segues into my other question. If we're purchasing this vehicle for this position, regardless of what happens with the position, we obviously would have a space for the vehicle to go.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Okay, I thought that was the case.
Our
And then,
fleet challenges remain. So for instance, we have one vehicle today, it showed up here for our recruit testing this morning, and I was asking the person who was driving it, well, number one, why he was driving it, and he said there's been some problems with it, and it turns out that the transmission won't shift gears at all. You can't use drive. You have to actually use, it's an automatic transmission, but you have to actually use the gear shift lever to go from first to second to third, and then back down again when you're, anyway. And the power steering is out on it, so anyway, we have some fleet challenges.
challenge, yeah.
We could definitely use this vehicle. If the position went away, trust me, we could definitely absorb it.
Okay, good. Just want to make sure we're staying ahead of that. And then this training that you get, or that's built into there, where is that training occur, and what's that about?
So there's 2 different parts. One of them is, and I don't recall specifically, so if I'm off a little bit, don't throw things at me. But there's 3 big things that this person needs to go through. Number 1 is an A-RIDE conference, which is basically, it's an advanced DUI investigation course. The second one is a drug recognition course, so they can identify drivers who are under the influence of something other than alcohol, some type of drug or anyway. And the third one, I don't know if this one is phlebotomy or a different DUI. There's every year they do a safety summit, and I don't know which of those 2 programs this one is written into it, but the first 2 are as part of it.
Okay. Those occur here in Coeur d'Alene, or
I think one of them for sure is down in Boise.
Okay.
The A-RIDE conferences or training is held here on a pretty regular basis.
So the fees for that is what's built into the
Yes, ma'am.
part?
Yep.
Okay.
That's part of the increased amount there.
Okay. Thank you.
Good. Dan?
That covers it. Good.
I'm good too. So I'll look for a motion, please.
Now, I would make a motion to recommend council authorize the purchase of 1 patrol vehicle to be utilized by the grant-funded DUI officer position in the amount of approximately $68,000.
Second.
Moving second. Any other thoughts? Comments? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Moving along. Consent, please. Thanks, Chief.
Yes, sir.
And from City Hall, it's our city administrator.
Good
Troy.
afternoon.
Welcome.
Thank you. Thanks for doing double duty today along with general services. We didn't have quite enough council members to fill that particular subcommittee. I come before you this afternoon to discuss whether or not we should move forward with the 2-term limit for the Coeur d'Alene Arts Commission members. This is the only commission or committee in the city of Coeur d'Alene that has term limits. Our Coeur d'Alene Arts Commission started in 1987, and in 2007, the municipal code, section 2.84.020, was amended to limit the number of terms for an arts commissioner. And that was limited to 2 3-year terms. The thinking back in '07 was to assist with moving some members on, and we had quite a bit of tenure in that particular commission. Well, today, we've had people not be there for 2 terms and have gone on and retired and done other good things, whereby we have an unseasoned group of commissioners and are looking for some of the seasoning to stay around after we've have this term limits in place. If we were to exercise them with a couple of our longstanding members, we would have a very young group of commissioners. The other feature with this that the Arts Commission has been looking at, I'd like to update you on. Term limits sound like a way in which to help a commission do well. However, you have a backstop in this because we're still keeping in place the fact that a commissioner has a 3-year term that must be approved by council. So every 3 years, the commissioner comes forward and can be re-upped into their term. And our commission in the arts is going to enforce and improve what being an active commissioner equates to, such as if you're not going to be able to make it, you need to let us know. So we'll be looking at their presenteeism, their involvement in subcommittees, and that type of work. So the commission is taking that on. So as the newest liaison to this particular commission, I'm bringing this forward as a couple of improvements, I believe. One being you have no other commissions that do this. It's kind of unique. And looking back in time, I think the improvements have been made so that the commissioners stay active, and thus this isn't a needed entity. Being term limits, combining that with the fact that at the end of a 3-year term, you get to say yes to a commissioner. So that would be my goal, is to reduce the number of words in a city ordinance.
What a concept. Dan, questions?
Not any questions. The only one I had that was answered that, what do we do with the other commissions? And actually, if this is the only one that we've got, I'm rather amazed that it stayed that way for this long because, each commission and board like that has its uniqueness and none is more important or less important than the other. So, we really need to have equity and fairness. I also believe in, some of the best groups are ones where you've got a mixture of tenure of the folks. And so I guess we can kind of be like our legislators and say we were for term limits before we were against term limits. So anyway, I'm supportive.
It's very diplomatic of you. Kiki.
Troy, I appreciated this clarity. I've been reading the staff report and trying to read the Arts Commission minutes, and it sounds like there was a lot of dialogue there over this. So I appreciate that they've spent a lot of time on it. The one thing I kind of want to clear up, though, is that when we're comparing all of these committees and commissions and boards to say that they're consistent, are there any other commissions that have a dedicated budget that comes from separate funding, like the Arts Commission? I know the library, but that's got state statute that governs it, but is this the only one that actually has a percentage of city dollars that go directly to governance by this commission?
Directly to governance. It probably is. Parking Commission gets to have a role in it, but most of that money is already contracted by things that the city does, as I think through the different commissions. Parks and Rec, you take their inputs. It doesn't get directly dedicated, but they have a big impact on what you do in our Parks Capital Improvement Fund. So yes, this one probably has the most direct access to the dollars that gets to work on the dollars as any committee or commission we have.
So I do think it's important to recognize that, because I was thinking that, and if I'm going down the wrong road here, I did talk to a couple of other counselors because I wanted to make sure that we got some good questions out on the table, that when that money is dedicated to a certain project, there's more than just the Arts Commission that comes to the table to decide where it goes, in that I've been invited to be an at-large member to decide on projects and such like that, and also that the budget is annually approved by council.
Absolutely.
But it's in a whole thing. It's not really in line items. It's
Well, they can give you a
movable.
pretty good idea of where we've allocated it per project. I can tell you what the Saltese Roundabouts budget is, tell you what the bike rack budget is. So you can always ask for that detail, very much like we supply you for every other department.
So it's
So that-
allocated to
Yes.
those projects when we approve that budget.
When we
So
approve those budget, yeah,
and I
good
think-
point.
I think that's important. I guess what I'm talking through here is when you're talking about a commission that does control, do you recall off the top of your head what their last year's budget was?
Let's see, a couple 100,000?
I thought it was higher than that for some reason, but it's a nice chunk of change. So so just to assure that if we're saying that we're not going to have term limits to solve a current problem, I mean, at one point, they had term limits to solve a problem.
Correct.
And so, and we're dealing with money dedicated specifically to that commission. I think that there are stopgaps in there, that there are other people brought in besides just the commissioners to make decisions on that budgeting, that council approves it by line item. And then, so that makes me more comfortable with going along with the no term limits. But I kind of have two other things on the money aside, because I think that it'll have a good eye on it that way. I have two other questions on this 3-year. I guess we're looking at that as a safety net, that every 3 years a position would be reviewed by council. Will there be a recommendation that comes from the Arts Commission as to, or is it just, here's the name and we say yes or no? Is that been discussed?
That's the direction that the last meeting was capturing with the Arts Commission. This has been on the agenda for a number of months as they've looked at this. And
I couldn't quite tell what the motion all included, whether it said strengthen policy, and that's what you're saying is
Correct.
that if,
so that when they made a motion to reaffirm this particular member of the commission, it would state that they are in good standing, for lack of a better term.
Okay.
And the good standing is yet to be defined, but we borrowed and looked at other commissions that have said, your presenteeism is there, you're a member of a subcommittee, you've been a part of the process, and you are supplying good information.
so best practices of a board member
Well
that
stated.
says, and then the rest of the board can say, yes, they've followed and complied, and so then we'd have that assurance. Yeah, I can see, I had heard them talking about bringing in a director, some sort of anchor leader to monitor all this, and batted that around, and it looks like they've really gone through it. I'm hoping it's not, like I said, a short-term solution to a long-term problem, but it looks like these things, with the 3-year council approval and extended oversight on the budget, I think I'm okay with it. And I want to support I think the Arts Commission is going in the right direction by expanding what they do with the different types of public art, and they've done so much good work. I just want to do everything we can to assure we're keeping them strong and sustainable.
I'd like to add one other comment just for the beauty of being here so long. We have a former council member that was on the council when this was brought forward to put term limits in place. That council member is no longer with City Council, but sits on the Ignite board and represents them at this commission. And had she been able to make it, would have voted to eliminate the term limits that she was party to when we put them in place.
A very nice little ribbon on the package.
Very nice.
Anything, Dan? So could you talk a little about the staffing? That's kind of, you guys have kind of been working on, does somebody drive it? Do they drive it themselves? Most of the commissions have some kind of support system behind it, whereas this one seems to need a lot of support. There's a lot of moving parts here, it seems like, at least reading their minutes. There's so many projects going on that have to coordinate with streets, and different constructions and different locations and then different vendors building the art, or can you comment on that? Has that been figured out? Are you still working on it, or is that just you?
No, it's actually Amy Ferguson who does all the heavy lifting, to give credit where credit is due, and it's Tim Martin helping us. Our goal in the Art Commission has been to take the dollars and put them towards the art and lower to eliminate any overhead, and we've been pretty successful at that. We've grown to the point now where the volunteers that are on the commission do a lot. It's a 13-member commission, which is one of your largest. It has as many subcommittees as it does members, and so it's a working group. But we've grown this art collection and all the things going on that it takes a great amount of effort. You have 2 art pieces coming in the next 40 days into the city of Coeur d'Alene, 2 sizable pieces that will be arriving here. We've got a call for qualifications for the Celtice roundabouts, and you're going to have a huge number of folks that have done public art. So think of all the details that go into making those requests. So as we continue to deliver art and try to keep our overhead down, we're looking to partner with any organizations here in our community that are already involved in that and have that same passion. So we're working with a couple of the groups, and they actually have representation on our Arts Commission as well. How do you do the most with limited dollars and still expand the mission of art and getting into learning about art and teaching young people about art and still putting art out in the community? So it's a work in progress, council member, and we hope to bring you more as we look at those partner organizations that we've been talking to.
Good. Well, I just think it's good for us to just be good stewards of the tax dollar and make sure we've gotten all these conversations out. So that's important.
So look for a motion.
I'd make a motion to recommend council approve an amendment to Municipal Code Section 2.84.020, removing the 2-term limit for Coeur d'Alene Arts Commission members.
Second.
It's been moved and second. Any other thoughts, comments? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? We'll put that on the agenda, please. So you can do this one more time? Fair enough?
Yes.
Anything else? I think we should call this as adjourned. Can I do that?
So moved.
So
Okay.
moved. Second.
Second. Done.
We're adjourned.
Aye,
All those
aye.
in favor?
Okay.
Aye. Yes. I watch Hayden City.